if you consider the gravity of this, folks at home, and for those of you who follow this drama while it was going in 2016, 2017, 2018, and all, offsetting that is this relatively weak, prosecutorial record with the fact that so few were punished. And in fact, virtually -1 low-level FBI worker, that was it. Others seem to fail to measure up. John Yoo with us now, the Deputy Assistant Attorney General. John, one of the things that sort of headlines this report is the one that sums it up, saying, again, the FBI's failure to critically analyze information that ran counter to the narrative of a Trump-Russia collusive relationship exhibited throughout Crossfire, that of course refers to the FBI's name for this investigation, is extremely troublesome. That would probably put it mildly. What do you think?
Sadly, Neil, that is putting it mildly. What you see here is that the federal government used its awesome power of investigation and prosecution to interfere in a presidential election. That's the bottom line of it. Now, people might say, oh, look, no one else is going to go to jail. There's not going to be any more prosecutions. That may be true. But the larger problem here, which Durham is putting on full display and is asking the Congress, even the president, and us as voters to take account of, is that the FBI and the Justice Department were so biased back in 2016 that they actually used their powers to investigate one of the major party candidates, Donald Trump, for the presidency. This was supposed to be a red line that our CIA, Justice Department, FBI were never supposed to cross again after Watergate. And all those checks and balances on our agencies failed because people at the top leadership of those agencies so wanted to believe that Donald Trump was some kind of Russian spy. This was so implausible, but they were so swayed by ideology that they were that biased and were pulled in and hoodwinked by Hillary Clinton and her Steele dossier. It's a sad, sad story, but the story's not over other than prosecution. Now the forum will switch to Congress and to the elections.
But as far as anyone at the Justice Department, now that this report is out, all 306 pages of it, what happens? I mean, it's very clear that justice wasn't blind here. And the report itself said that the FBI used raw, unanalyzed, and uncorroborated intelligence to essentially foist an agenda and pursue an agenda. We don't know at what point it had a good sense that this agenda was wrong-headed, and just factually wrong, period. But it got away with that. It just seems to be that there should be some punishment meted out at the FBI itself. I know Comey was fired by President Trump early on, but that's about it.
Yeah, the disappointing part of this report so far seems to be there's a lack of recommendations, but you could also say that's not Durham's job.
Right.
Durham's job is to decide whether to prosecute people. He's saying, right, all those people at the FBI and the Justice Department who were responsible for this decision, they've all been fired. They're gone. Some of them are even suing Donald Trump for being fired, right? Like Pete Strzok and some other people.
That's right.
So the real question is, what can be done permanently to make sure the FBI and the Justice Department never do this again? That's really the job of Congress. That's really the job of who we choose to elect to Congress and the presidency. And that's
that
something
seems
that
to be
Durham
a
does
big
open
leap at a long time leap. But one of the things that's very clear in this is that Durham, for whatever reason, had a spotty prosecutorial record. He was not able to follow up. That's not exclusively his fault, I grant you, to put meat behind this, punishment behind this. What do you make of that?
Now, that's a good point, Neil. I think people who see the facts and saw that our intelligence agencies and law enforcement tried to distort an election and really kind of ruin the first 2 years of a presidency, they'll want more than just this report. Durham, though, he has to meet a high standard, right? He tried. He lost 2 cases in court for relatively minor charges. So Durham's coming back and saying, look, there's no one else to prosecute. There's no one else I can go before a jury and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they broke the law. You could say, for example, maybe Jim Comey was biased. Maybe his top leadership were biased against Trump, and they launched an investigation. Now this report makes clear that never should have been launched. But what Durham is saying implicitly is there's no criminal laws that make people go to jail for that because they were biased, because they were wrong. We don't want people in the agencies to worry about going to jail because they make the wrong prosecutorial decision. That's why I think you're right, Neil. There is going to be a lack of things you can do in the very short term immediately that are going to make people feel better about this miscarriage of justice. On the other hand, the more important thing to keep the eye on the ball is, just like after Watergate, what can we do to make sure this great power we trust in our agencies, our bureaucrats, is not abused again as it was so badly abused in 2016?
But, you know, if you think about it, this investigate, whatever you want to call it, prompted the whole Mueller investigation that resulted in, what, about 36 criminal charges in all, right? Half dozen Trump associates was sort of caught up in that whirlwind. And when all is said and done, it was a nothing burger. It was nothing, period. That it just doesn't jive with reality. I know people will shrug their shoulders and say, all right, let's move on here. There's nothing to see here. But I understand what you're saying, John, about how this will get committees going, Congress going. I don't know how far they get going. It will be seen through the prism of politics as this conclusion is now. And it just seemed like not only a travesty of justice, but a recognition that even when you create something out of nothing, you can get away with it.
Oh, look, this is, I don't want to understate what happened here. This is
and you're not doing
worst.
that. I'm just stepping way back from this, but go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, this is like one of the worst dirty tricks ever played in a presidential campaign. If you think about it from the Hillary Clinton perspective, look at all the trouble she caused with just a few $100,000 spent on this Steele dossier. The problem is you didn't get any, I don't see yet any federal criminal laws that were violated. And so the idea of punishing people that some people are going to ask for by putting for a jury and sending them to prison, I don't think is available here. So what do we do instead? Just like what did we do after Watergate? Maybe one of the, I can't imagine this won't be an issue in the presidential campaigns. I got to think Donald Trump's going to make a huge amount of hay out of this. And you got to think that people who in the Biden administration are going to be a little bit worried about that, since Biden was vice president when this happened. And many of the people in the Biden administration are alumni of the administration that launched this whole thing. That's going to be one issue. I think another thing that you can do is, I think people in Congress could start seriously considering whether we want an FBI that's this big, that has the ability to prosecute politicians, rather than what I think the founders wanted was to allow us as the voters through the electorate to hold politicians accountable, rather than wanting to throw politicians in jail. But maybe that's the more important thing, is you've got this fight on the budget. You've been covering a lot about the debt limit and so on. Maybe Congress should start thinking about cutting off the funding for the FBI. Maybe Congress should start thinking about cutting off funding for different parts of the Justice Department that were responsible for this miscarriage of justice in 2016. Maybe the American people don't need to live with a huge FBI and an all-powerful Justice Department.
It is interesting because if you think about it, John, I mean, there was no FBI at the time. Our forefathers were coming up with the concept for this great republic. But I do know a thing or two about them being concerned with overreach and government overreach, given, of course, what we had dealt with another power overseeing us. It just seems odd that from that foundation, things got out of control. And yet there doesn't seem to be much punishment for institutions that did get out of control.
That's an excellent point, Neil. If you brought like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington or even Alexander Hamilton, and you used the Star Trek transporter and you brought them to today, there'd be a lot of things they'd be into, like medical science, but they would be shocked at the existence of the FBI. You look at the Constitution, there's no mention of a national police agency. The founders, I think, would be amazed that we have this gigantic police force and investigatory force running around the country. Maybe this is a time for Congress to rethink whether we want to narrow, whether we want to reform the things that the FBI and the Justice Department do. That's nothing, that's all outside Durham's purview, but he's putting it before us and before Congress, all the facts that you need to be able to make that decision if you want to do it.
That is brilliantly put, and that is exactly what Durham kind of ends this entire report saying, leafing through it here. But John, it's an excellent point, because when all is said and done, he did not, that is Durham, recommend any new charges against individuals, wholesale changes, anything differently than what has already occurred, and essentially saying that the politically charged investigations are delineated and attacked as they stand, but recognizing that the behavior behind that and changing that behavior, that's an issue that apparently goes beyond his pay grade.
Yes, and in fact, it's really interesting, and you have to have a lot of sympathy for Durham because
Absolutely.
there's a lot of things you could do here, but he's only really narrowly focused on charging people with federal crimes with proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a tiny amount of the whole universe of things that could happen to reform this situation. The other thing I think he brings to light, which really is also outside his purview, is how intertwined the Hillary Clinton campaign was with the Obama administration and the intelligence and law enforcement agencies. That's something I think that really has to be resolved through elections. Are we going to start voting for people who are going to promise to break that kind of change? That's another thing that founders would have been extremely worried by, shocked by even, is political parties intermixing with our civil servants and using their powers to go after one of the parties that's running for the presidency, the opposition party that's running against the incumbents. I hope that voters take this into account. That's how I think the founders really wanted things to be reformed, is now we as voters know, because of the Durham report, all the mistakes, all the biases, all the dirty politics that went into the 2016 election. I hate to say it, I was a doubter at first, but Donald Trump was right that this all was a hoax. Maybe it will cause voters to think differently about their choices in the next election. And the people we vote for office can say, I promise we're going to cut back on the Justice Department. We're going to cut back on the FBI and go back to the more modest federal government that our founders intended for us.
Yeah, one thing I've learned about history here, and you don't need to be on a teleporter, John, to your point, is that it swings to extremes, right? So we'll see what happens. But John, thank you for your expertise as always. John Yoo, the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, so much more legal, unlike many.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.